Part of what I think is so important about celebrating commemorative months like Black History Month is that they act as the beginning of the conversation, not the end. This is a great way to get people engaged around really important issues and interests within the Black community. And I think people are going to be really impressed with the diversity of films and events and the ease of access. We've worked really hard to make this a really accessible program. All of our events will be available on our MKE Film Facebook page, our Black Lens Facebook page, and our MKE Film YouTube page. So you can go to either of those pages and watch events for free. Our films will be available on our watchmkefilm.org page from February 1st through February 28th. Hey everyone, welcome to the final week of Milwaukee Film's 2021 Black History Month program presented by Molson Coors. My name is Gerard Blanks. I'm Director of Cultures and Communities for Milwaukee Film. For the month of February, Milwaukee Film has dedicated its new programming to films and events that celebrate, honor, and elevate Black culture and traditions. This week, we turned our attention to Black culture, communities, and politics. Tonight's event is rather special for a couple of reasons. So I'll tell you, first of all, this is a collaboration between Milwaukee Film, Black Lens, and the Race, Equity, and Procedural Justice Committee. Tonight's conversation is informed by the feature film Growing Up Milwaukee, directed by Milwaukee native Tyshun Wardlow, a member of this evening's panel discussion. In addition to Tyshun, we welcome panelists Sean Wilson, Smart Justice Campaign Manager for the ACLU, Judge M. Joseph Donald, Wisconsin Court of Appeals, T.R. Williams, Deputy Director of External Affairs, Office of Governor Evers, and Milwaukee County Executive David Crowley. Milwaukee County Circuit Judge Brittany Grayson will lead tonight's talk. Judge Grayson presides over CHIPS and delinquency cases at the Vel R. Phillips Youth and Family Justice Center. Another reason tonight's event is special, beyond this amazing panel we've put together, is that it concludes our 2021 Black History Month programming. As far as events are concerned, now keep in mind, we have films going all the way through Sunday. So Growing Up Milwaukee is one of them. As of right now, Growing Up Milwaukee is the most popular film out of the 20 feature films that we've shown all month for Black History Month. So please, if you haven't seen it, make sure that you see it by Sunday, because after Sunday, we are no longer doing Black History Month. That's because we moved to Women's History Month. So please mark your calendar for Monday, March 1st, because our Women's History Month programming begins. Again, we've got another collection of amazing feature films and short films. And our first engagement is a talk with Dr. Yaba Blay, moderated by Milwaukee's own Dr. Monique Liston. So for more information, go to milwaukeefilm.org, WHM, and you can also purchase tickets and passes on our website. Again, I just want to thank everyone that supported us all month. This has been an amazing experience, and this is the perfect panel to end our Black History Month event programming. Keep in mind, we're working with virtual technology here, so we may have some technical difficulties throughout. As you can see, we're starting about 10 minutes late. Sorry about that, but we've been trying to make some fixes on the fly. So, just bear with us, but I think you'll enjoy tonight's panel. And I guess it's time for me to leave and bring up Judge Brittany Grayson.
All right, good evening, everyone. I'm Judge Joe Donald. As you can tell, anybody that knows Brittany, I don't look like Brittany, but she was on earlier. We were having some technical difficulties, but I will tell you this: Brittany is ready if she can get in here. But she sent me her her notes. So I'm going to do my best impression of Brittany. So at this time, I want to welcome everyone. And we're grateful and delighted that you're here for what I think will be a very insightful discussion tonight. We have Tyshawn Wardlow's film, Growing Up in Milwaukee. And as I had indicated to the panelists earlier, I've grown up in Milwaukee, so I am really looking forward to hearing the discussion. And I want to add a little bit in terms of my own life experiences. But I thought the film, Tyshawn, was fantastic. I was really moved by it. And so I'm looking forward to hearing your insights on it. But the one thing I want to touch on before we get into the film is the criminal justice system had created the Race, Equity, and Procedural Justice Committee in collaboration with Black Lens Milwaukee. We're putting on this event tonight. I want to give you some brief background about the Race, Equity, and Procedural Justice Committee's makeup. Back in 2013, in the Milwaukee court system, we decided that it was time to kind of really confront some of the issues of race in the criminal justice system. So we closed down all the courts, and we brought all the stakeholders together to get together to have a real honest discussion. And part of that committee consisted of former Chief Judge Jeff Crimmers, who was very supportive of the group's effort to get the program up and running. And also, I want to also give a shout out to also former Chief Judge Maxine White and Chief Judge Mary Trigiano, who keeps the process going, and had a lot to do with making sure that we were together. The Race, Equity, and Procedural Justice Committee operates under the umbrella of the Milwaukee Community Justice Council, commonly known as the CJC, and it convenes and holds local government and legal partners in the community in terms of discussing issues around criminal justice. But at this time, what I want to do is introduce our panelists tonight. First, we're going to hear from Tyshawn Wardlow. Tyshawn Wardlow is a Milwaukee native and is owner of Wardlow Productions, a boutique independent film and television production company located here in the Midwest with a office in Milwaukee. And after graduating from Santa Clara University with a BA in business, Tyshawn relocated back into the Midwest and earned her master's in business administration. She has over 10 years of experience in television and broadcast news, talk show, and production before starting her own production company. Also tonight with us is T.R. Williams, who serves as the Deputy Director of External Affairs for Governor Evers. TR's passion focuses on bridging the gap between one's current reality and their aspired reality through advocacy, policy, and effective communication. We also have Sean Wilson with us, is an experienced organizer and activist and mentor and campaign manager for the ACLU of Wisconsin Campaign for Smart Justice. He's a young brother. Every time I see him, I really look forward to hearing what he has to say, because he's out there making things happen. I know waiting in the background, and hopefully we can get the county exec in the group. And also I hope that we will continue to work on trying to see if we can get Brittany back on in the group. But at this time, Tyshawn, I want to just kind of kick it off to you a little bit and tell us what was your inspiration for the film, and what did you hope viewers would feel or think after watching it?
Well, great. Well, thank I'm so excited once again to be a part of the panel, and then also for the panel to be here and actually to discuss some things about the film. So to jump right in, I was inspired actually to create the film because I am a Milwaukee native. However, I've left the state, have come back, and in between transitioning in the entertainment industry for my career, I realized that unfortunately there was very staggering statistics coming out of Milwaukee, that we were, of course, all of you have heard of them, the worst city, to live in for Blacks in the US, the economic disparities, worse incarceration. So with that being said, I wanted to be able to focus in on the stories that were behind the statistics. And not only that, but focus on the stories actually from the youth perspective to really understand what it meant for youth growing up in the city right now. And then also to focus in on individuals who are helping change the narrative of what's being created day in and day out. So also highlighting organizations in the film as well, which I did. And then to answer your question as far as what I hope people would take away from it was first to realize and understand that Milwaukee has a long way to go. And people are once again working on these issues, but one thing, and most importantly, that all hope wasn't lost for the city. And then to be able to display that on a national audience, which is currently doing because it's streaming exclusively on HBO Max. So super excited about the exposure of the film, super excited about the positive response thus far. And so here we go.
Okay, all right. Now, did you expect the sort of the recognition that it would, the interest that it would receive?
Surprisingly, locally, I did not. I knew that when I actually set out to create the film that out the gate, I wanted to make sure that it went to a national audience, but I did not even anticipate the local response and support that I would actually receive from the film, because sometimes you can be the most critical when it's about your city, when it's about your home. So I'm just super excited to be getting the positive feedback that I've gotten in the interest in the film, and then the many conversations that have been created surrounding the film. So.
All right, and TR, what was your response to the film?
I think what I was most struck by was the heaviness of it all. There was as the young people were telling their stories and getting to learn more about them, when they were sort of mentioning their very first time where they felt like things were going left in their lives, they were talking about 12 and 14. And so that heavy, really, I guess another way to articulate it is the realness of it, and the directness of it is what really is me about being here on this panel, have this conversation about disrupting this pipeline, about what we can do. I appreciate you, Tyshawn, for providing a platform for that narrative and those voices to be. As a former criminal defense attorney, that's really what at the base I consider the work to be about, is those who didn't have that platform for a voice, providing that so that people could feel like they were participating in what was happening in their lives, things just happening to them. And so, that heaviness is a word that comes to mind. And then there was a level of pride to opening scene of seeing that aerial shot of Milwaukee. I'm like, that's my home. I know that. And seeing those your places as well. So I probably said like 3 or 4 times. I had a lot of feelings.
I'm not surprised. I was also moved by seeing the local shots. And one of the things that struck me was how it identified place. So I see our county exec finally fought his way through the crowd, and he's back. He's with the panel. So I want to welcome David Crowley, the county exec. David, I know you're a lifelong resident of Milwaukee. You grew up in Milwaukee. You grew up in 53206, and you've served 2 terms in the state legislative assembly and you were now the first African American and the youngest, I believe, to be elected to Milwaukee County Exec. So I'm glad to see you here tonight. What I'm going to do, Sean, I don't want to. I was coming your way, but you know it's the county exec, so I'm gonna kick it off to him, and then I'll come back to you because I'll make sure I get a good word from you. So, Mr. Crowley, what did you think? What did you think of the film?
Oh wow! Well, you know, first and foremost, it's just great to be on this panel of a wide variety of individuals. And when I think about growing up in Milwaukee, when I looked at, you know, Marquell, Brandon, and I believe Tiana, you know, I kind of thought about my own life, my own upbringing. And for a minute, I was like, Tyshawn, she's taking almost embodying everybody's experience almost growing up in Milwaukee. And so when I looked at those young people, I started to reminisce even about my own experience and understanding the struggles and the barriers that are there. But I also think that when I looked at that, it also gave me the fire. It helped me understand even more why I do the work that we're doing, especially here in Milwaukee County, when we talk about racial equity, achieving racial equity and being the healthiest county. And so I'm really excited about this movie because I think it's showing some of the rawness about Milwaukee, and hopefully it will spark more individuals to really talk about their experience and use that as a stepping stool towards greatness.
All right, and now I just want to get Mr. Sean Wilson in here and have him give us his take on things. Yeah, Sean, I think you have an interesting perspective about it all. So what were your thoughts?
I was first and foremost, you know, I'm forever grateful to the sister Tyshawn for, you know, even thinking that I should be in this film, even feeling that my story should be shared in this film. So I definitely want us to give our sister her flowers, and definitely support her as she continues in her upward trajectory in filmmaking. And so when I first saw the film, and I saw clips of it, Tyshawn was sending me clips of it here and there. I think I saw like 2 or 3 clips before I actually saw the entire film. And this was over 2 years ago, about two and a half years ago. And so when I finally saw the film, you know, I was very emotional at, you know, just the vision coming together. And I always wonder how it would come together. And she did her thing, you know, when she put everything together. I think ultimately, Growing Up Milwaukee is definitely the embodiment of everyone on this panel. It is the story of everyone who we interact with here in the city of Milwaukee, as well as throughout. We saw in that story a lot of hurt, but we also saw a great deal of resilience. And I think that speaks volumes of exactly who we are as a city, is that though we have a lot of hurt, there's a lot of work that is being done to heal the hurt, and there's a lot of resiliency on display in that film. And I think anyone who want to know about what's happening in Milwaukee should see that film, and they will be informed about everyone who has all their hands on deck, bringing about change in this city.
So Tyshawn, when we did our little pre-talk, there was one thing that really struck me about these stories, and you kind of gave a little update on what has happened to some of the young people. Can you just kind of expand on that? Because you know these stories, this story that you're telling, everyone has lived it, everyone sees it, and we've been doing it now for quite a long time. So where are things now?
So one thing that I love that we're actually still in contact with all 3 of the featured youth. Of course, when we started filming with them, the 2 young males, Brandon and Marquell, they were actually one was 15 going on 16, and the other one was just turning 16, and Tiana was 18. But now they're actually all, well, Tiana, of course, is 21 now, as well as Marquel and Brandon are 18, and I think going on 19. Yeah, 18 going on 19 possibly. And so just being able to continue seeing their journey, which is still a day-to-day battle. And I also just want to give a big shout out to Sean, and I hate for a lack of a better word, we still kind of double team Brandon to make sure that he's okay and to make sure that he's on the right track. And we're just a phone call away or a Facebook message away. So we're still very active in what's happening in their day-to-day lives. And once again, it's still, trial and error. Where Marquel actually had started undergrad, and I believe that was in the film as well at the end for the update, but then his brother got killed this fall, so that kind of deterred him, and he left school because he couldn't focus, but yet he still has the mentors in his life. Kwame Nixon is still reaching out to him, and a lot of others. Uncle Rick, who we saw in the classroom in Vincent, is still very heavily, even though he's graduated, it's still in his life. Tiana, actually just spoke with her the other day, and she's just kind of telling me she's working right now, so she's excited. She's working on her music. She has a very positive relationship with her son through his foster mothers. So all of these things are just kind of ongoing. So they still have their issues here and there, but I'm excited that they're moving forward in a positive direction.
So, Sean, you talked about the need for resilience, and I just wanted to sort of tease that out a little bit more. What kind of situation are you talking about in terms of our young people being able to need to be resilient?
We need to be resilient because there's a lot of violence here in our city. We are a state that has high racial disparities here in this in this state and in the city of Milwaukee alone. And so being faced with all of these issues, that's a reason for us to be resilient. It's a reason for us to engage in this work to bring about change. And it's a reason for us to really zoom in on our young people who are hurting and who are looking for some form of guidance and direction. And so we have to be resilient, as we have been for the last 400 plus years that we've been in this country. I mean, it's in our blood, it's in our DNA to be resilient when we're faced with insurmountable challenges. And so that's what I mean when I talk about the resiliency in that film. I mean, it opened up, with the brother Kwame, engaging our young people, and having them, write down on a piece of paper, what's real. The truth is.
Right. So TR, you work for the Evers administration. We've all know about the issue of the school to prison pipeline. We've all, we all know the statistics. So what do you think elected officials should do to disrupt that pipeline?
I think that elected officials, public officials, are uniquely positioned within the system to understand those inner workings. And while we have those organizers and activists outside the system who are putting the pressure, who are creating that fire underneath us and holding us accountable, that the responsibility of elected officials is then to hear the voice of the people, to see that information, to see that data, to understand that narrative, and then to act. And so what that means is that, whether activists or advocates are coming to the governor's office, putting the responsibility on the entire plan, but to be able to hear their voice, and because we're in the system, be able to connect those dots, as Governor Evers would say, where it needs to be. And I think that, we can get into that later if we want to, but I think that looks like several things in all three branches of government that runs how state operations are. And definitely, I think that, in my view, looking at health and well-being, and then certainly looking at the criminal justice system.
Well, County Exec Crawley, you're an elected official. I don't know if you've got a sign on your desk that says the buck stops here, but you're the man that we're looking at. So what role do you think as the elected official, the head elected, the chief executive officer, what role do you think you can play?
Well, I think TR was hitting on this, right? Like, we are in a very unique position, and we look at things from that 20,000-foot view when we think about funding the programs and services that people need. But we're also seeing how these services are being delivered to those, whether they're actually receiving those services or not. And so, from my standpoint, we all have a hand in this. But as the CEO of Milwaukee County, I mean, the vision has to come from the top. We have to look at our own policies and practices and making sure that individuals, our young people and people of color, have access to good paying jobs, to healthcare, to education. But we also have to make sure that we're holding one another accountable and being true in having this difficult conversation that we have been hearing or having, because it's going to take all of us really coming to the table to really tackle the racism, the economic downturn that we've been seeing, particularly in Black communities for many generations. And so we talk about we need to be resilient, but we also need to make sure that we're bridging the gap and bringing others along, so we don't have to continue to see this cycle of poverty, see this cycle of injustice in our community. So for me, it's really about making sure that we build as many bridges as possible within our own communities, do what we need to do, as well as reaching out to others, because when the tide rises, we need to make sure that all the boats rise. But it's going to take all of us coming to the table, and it starts with people like myself.
So this is good. This is good. So what my follow-up question at this point is that what is the future of Milwaukee? We've all grown up here. We're all playing roles and trying to transform the city. But what do you think that future looks like? Sean, I'm gonna let you kick this one off.
I think one thing that Fred Hampton, who everyone everyone is discussing, Judas and the Black Messiah, said, is that the revolutionary is always optimistic, knowing that the revolution may not come in his lifetime, but the revolution will come. And so I'm very optimistic that the future of Milwaukee will look like one that is very inclusive, equitable, and we're continuing to deal with the challenges that we face. But that's what the future of Milwaukee looks like to me, that we're continuing to move forward. We must continue to move forward. We must continue to engage in this struggle. And as we continue to engage in this struggle and exert that effort, we will see progress. But we must continue to forge ahead. And so the future of Milwaukee, in my opinion, because I am someone who is an optimist, is that it looks very promising, because the folks who are on this screen and the folks who are on the ground in the community who are not on this screen are doing the necessary work that needs to be done. And on the piece of elected officials, I just want to chime in just briefly and say that we need our elected officials to be bold, to be courageous, and to do the things that the people want them to do and have elected them into office to do. I understand that there's always the next election at the forefront of many of our elected officials' mind, but the people put you in office, and the people put you in office because of what you said on the campaign trail. So keep your promise and do what it is that the people put you in office to do, and don't worry about your political opposition, because at the end of the day, people power rules.
He's not talking about me.
You're unelected.
No,
that was real smooth. That was real smooth.
I know. I understand that there's a responsibility. We all have that responsibility, and I have to say, there was a scene in the movie that struck me about the need to kind of understand the humanity of everyone that's involved. And it's the young brother who's driving to the barber shop, and he drives past his mother, and he doesn't say anything. Like, there goes my mom. And I you know, it actually, I'll say this, it poked me in the eye. You know, I'm sitting there, grown man, looking for a Kleenex at that point. But it was like, wow, the humanity in here he is trying to put his life together, and yet he can't take time to connect with his mom, who he doesn't see that often. So I thought that was a very powerful moment in the film. So Tyshawn, what do you think the future looks like?
And actually, I just kind of want to touch base on the moment that you talked about, because that was so organic. Like, that was not scripted. We did not know his mom was going to be on the bus stop. And interestingly, he had been in that group home only for maybe about 4 or 5 months prior to us even being introduced to him, because he literally just got out of the detention center. And placed there. So he had not actually seen his mom in person since he had been in there, because they hadn't really connected. So to kind of have that, and he was like, yeah, that was my mom. I'm like, that was your mom? Like, I need to talk to her. But, you know, he was able to call her, like, Mom, was that you? And she was like, yeah. So I just felt that was like, just how ironic that was, that your mom was literally on the bus stop while you're learning how to drive, while going to get your hair cut. But as far as what do I believe about the future, kind of just to touch base, everything that Sean said, I know that I'm not on the ground running, but yet and still as a filmmaker, just from that perspective, being able to continuously tell the stories of what's happening in the city and not watering it down, not making sure that it's adjusted to anyone's comfort level, because sometimes you got to get uncomfortable for situations to change. So just having those uncomfortable conversations, even if it's in the form of storytelling, even if it's in the form of, displaying something on social media, not necessarily to get attention, but to also just be able to get the word out, or even campaigns about, what people are doing to change the narrative in the city. And I do want to just say big ups to Sean for allowing me to film with him, and sharing your stories, because I know that it resonates so much with Brandon, even to this day. I know that he has such a high regards for Sean, and trust him even with some of the dark things. Like, did you just text him and tell him this? But he feels comfortable, talking to Sean. He's not gonna, call and tell me some of these things, even after we stay in his life. So I just thank you, for what you're doing in the lives of our youth.
I will echo that. I've run into Sean out in the community back in the day when we used to be out in the community, and every time I've run into, man, I always say that's a young brother that I really appreciate talking to, and you keep it so genuine. And I think that's one of the things that we need to sort of get some of our young people to understand, that we're all connected. We're all in this together. I've been a judge now I'm going on my 24th year as a judge. So I've been a judge longer than a lot of the young people that I see have been alive. And so I've struggled in that role, because I've really tried to figure out ways to keep people out of the system. And and sometimes you run out of words, because the young people are dealing with so much. I mean, there's so much trauma in their lives, and so it just gets, the words just don't even begin to sort of address the problems and the issues that they have. So in terms of sort of disrupting this pipeline, the school to prison pipeline, I just want to say, TR, you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I always have a thought. I would say one of the things, I'm getting to your question, one of the things I mentioned is that when we talk about the future of Milwaukee, or even when you talk about where Brandon sees his mom, is that even when I was working at the Harlem Children's Zone, and then when I was working for Milwaukee Public Schools and as a public defender in Milwaukee, I noticed that, you know, language and the way that we approach young people is often about their behavior and ordering their behavior, right, and moderating behavior. And, you know, I grew up in a household where it was certainly expected, mandated, the level of respect with my parents and with adults. And honestly, right, it's sort of that, you know, be seen and not heard. I do think that that model doesn't resonate with the young people that we are seeing, being, you know, relatively young person myself. But in working in those spaces, that concept worked, I feel like, in my lifetime because I trusted the adults in my life and there was mutual respect. And I think part of the narrative that Tyshawn, you were able to bring out is how often these young people were disrespected. And so the concept of approaching a young person with this mandated respect, and then if they don't give that in the way that you're expecting them to come down on them in this way that is punitive, is not a system that can work. And I think that beginning part brings me to the answer to your question, Judge Downell, about disrupting. So that comes from how we're treating young people in school. That comes from how we treat them at the jobs they're having. And then obviously that completely comes into what happens then if they end up being part of the criminal justice system. And District Attorney Chisholm hit on this a little bit in the film where he talked about some of the young people come in as, you know, quote unquote victims of the system initially, right? They're in the foster care system. And all of a sudden that baby who is, you know, 4, 5, or 6, who's the victim, becomes 12, 13, 14, and is now quote unquote the criminal. And so in us disrupting it, I think our viewpoint on how we're trying to moderate and control young people's actions is predicated on this old system of respect when they have been disrespected. And in a lot of cases, the adults in their lives who made decisions way before they were able to make decisions were not doing so in a way that showed that respect to them. And trying to come at them in that way is just not the basis of what we should do. And we should see that in our education system. And we should certainly see that in our criminal justice system. I have a nephew, right? And so I think about my nephew being cute and people loving on him. And at what point are people locking their doors when they see him walk by? Where does he make that shift and change as a Black body that has been feared, criminalized, and then the system has gone to try to just, you know, mandate and sort of control their behavior. And so I think that disruption comes at a different view of how we see crime and a different view of understanding our criminal code. Ultimately, crime in the criminal code is a contract in this politic of citizens, right? And certain things are determined to be unacceptable behavior that has a consequence. But when we look at it through that lens, we recognize that that thing has changed over the course of time. And so how we use the word criminal or how we approach those who have done crimes need to be through that lens that is ultimately this social contract that has been created and has been baptized in white supremacy. And so one of the things that I'm most excited about in the governor's budget is that he has the sentencing review council. That criminal code hasn't been reviewed in over 20 years. And I think that's a non-sexy piece of the budget. People don't want to talk about, but it's a way that we can have a very practical way to look at the ways in which we have sentencing laws for these crimes that in a social contract need to be disrupted, need to be pushed up against, and need to be realized for what they're really trying to control and who they're really trying to control.
Boom.
Yeah, so so David, I'm gonna have you follow up on that since TR just dropped the mic.
You're right.
You know, so you grew up in Milwaukee.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how to follow up what TR just said because I mean, she just did drop the mic, but I think we really have to put our money where our mouth is because we also have to make the investments upstream, particularly on strategies that we know are going to keep young people out of the system. I mean, we've been doing that through Milwaukee County. We have our Credible Messengers program that is about intervening, giving mediation, giving some emotional support to many of these young people from those who are credible messengers who've been through a lot of these things before. And so, when I think about my own upbringing, I grew up in the 53206 zip code. I grew up on 23rd and Burleigh, 22nd and Brown, 27th and Lloyd, 11th and Locust. I can go on and on. I faced eviction. And so when I think about what saved me, it was this community. It was those programs, those nonprofits like Urban Underground, like the True Schools, that are literally investing in young people to introduce them to something different. And if it wasn't for Urban Underground, when I was a junior in high school, introducing me to community organizing and literally for the first time, getting me outside of my own state and learning about best practices and having the opportunity to see other Black men and women in different positions that I didn't see necessarily here within the city or Milwaukee County. And so we have to really expose these young people to a lot more. And we have to actually, lift the bar of what we actually expect from these young people, because you know what? We always talk about the fact that they are our future, but I'm going to continue to say that they are our now, and we need to let them know that they are now and continue to pour into them as such. And so, right now we know that young people, for many generations have been the nucleus of change in this country. So when you think about the Civil Rights March and how the young people stepped up and filled the jails, they have been here. When you think about the Black Panther Party and how young they were when they started, I mean, we know that our young people have the power. We just need to trust them with it and help guide them with it.
Wow. All right. I keep, all I can say is I'm hearing finger snapping right now. Everybody's snapping their fingers. So, Tyshawn, when did you initially come up with this concept, this idea? And how did you turn that seed into such a powerful plant?
Well, interestingly, the seed was planted as soon as I started my production company, because as I stated, I kind of floated between states, and I was just wrapping up some work in Chicago, and I decided that I didn't want to wait on any more contracts. I was going to be my own. So I started my television production company here. And with that being said, I wanted to focus in on, as I stated, what was happening in my hometown. And because of those statistics, I wanted to tell the story. So the seed was planted when I started the company. However, it did take a little while for it to sprout. So we basically, I was getting my name out there as a company, as well as raising funds. And when we finally got our first initial amount of funding to start, that was actually 2 years after the concept of the documentary was created. But then also there was some magic that happened in that manifesting of filming, because literally I received and ran into everyone that I needed to be a part of the film in those moments. Prime example, we met our 3 youth literally when we started filming. The beginning scene with Kwamanon and Marquel, I just met Marquel that day, and he shared his truth. And I said, I need to film with that young man. And from there, it was history, getting permission from his mom, because once again, he was under 18, and handling all of that legal work. And then when I got in contact with Brandon, I knew that once again, I wanted to highlight an incarceration component. He just literally, like, if Brandon probably would have gotten in trouble one more time, he was going to be a situation just like Sean. He was probably going to be locked up at 17 and sent away for X amount of years. Then I'm reading an article, talks about Sean Wilson. I'm like, get out of here. So I contact him out of the blue, like, hi, by the way, I'm a filmmaker. I'm creating this film. Didn't know him prior to that. Didn't have any knowledge of, my history, my background, but yet he entrusted me to be able to film with him and also introduce him to Brandon and the youth at that moment. So it just all unfolded just as it should. And I think that's why it's a little bit more powerful than I expected, because I felt like it needed to happen the way it happened. I needed to run into who I ran into at those moments in those organizations that I connected with. So that's kind of the long story out of a short story out of a long story.
So Sean, you were pretty willing to contribute and give your time, your talent. Did you give any of your treasure?
I gave my heart. I give my heart to this work. 4 months after my 17th birthday. Let me rewind. So I was born and raised Milwaukee, Wisconsin, raised by my grandmother, Vera Green, and my grandfather, who both worked for A.O. Smith and Eaton Corporation, respectively. They both, you know, worked for these factories for over 25, 30 years, invested in me, gave me the world. And the reason they gave me the world was because they were aware of what I was being exposed to when I went and spent my summers with my mother in the 53206 zip code on 13th and Burlock. And so they said their thinking was, okay, if we gave our honey, that's what they called me, their honey, everything he wouldn't be tempted to gravitate to that lifestyle. However, peer pressure is stronger than parental guidance. And so peer pressure coupled with my poor decision making led me 4 months after my 17th birthday to be standing in front of a judge where I was charged and ultimately convicted and sent away to prison for 17 years. I was given the amount of time that I only been on this earth. I never had a prior criminal record. I was a Chapter 220 student, and I'm probably revealing my age right here. I was bused to Franklin Public School District. And so, I mean, academic scholarships, athletic scholarships, I don't understand even to this day how I received the sentence that I received and not having a track record or a jacket the way most folks who come into the court and receive a long sentence. But I'm a big believer that whatever comes into our life was meant to come into our life. And whatever doesn't come into our life was not meant to come into our life. And so I say all of that to say that I'm able to connect with these young people because I'm raw and uncut. And I let them know that, listen, you can go this route, but I'm letting you know if you go this route, this is the outcome. And I was fortunate to run into individuals while I was in prison who mentored me. Even as resistant as I was, they pulled my coat, they gave me books, and ultimately cultivated my love of learning that I already had. And I turned that cell into a classroom so that when I came home, I hit the ground running, and I happened to run into Charlotte Moore, founder of Urban Underground, who heard my story and was like, dude, we need to get this out here. And 6 months later, I'm on a plane on my way to Harvard, Boston, for a training, you know, and so that is what like really introduced me to this work and into this space. And then 3 months after being hired for the ACLU, Tyshawn, I get a call from Tyshawn like, hey, I'm a filmmaker, I need you to do this. And I'm like, okay, everything is happening according to God's plan. But let me wrap up real quick. 2 weeks before I came home, my grandmother, who raised me, who tore down the highway and made sure she came and saw me, kept the phone on, kept money on my books. She made sure that I was good while I was in prison, ordered me books, whatever. 2 weeks before I came home, she died. And I remember my grandmother always saying to me that I want to leave Milwaukee. And I told her, don't leave until I come home. And she said, I'm not going anywhere until you come home. But 2 weeks before I was to be released, my grandmother died. And that really shook me, but it also invigorated me to expose this system for the injustice that it continues to perpetuate on Black and brown boys in this state, in this city, and throughout this country. And that's my why. Is because I told Ms. Vera that I was going to come home and I was going to speak truth to power and do the work that is necessary to bring about transformational change. and that's why I do what I do.
Good, good. No, man, that's why I always appreciate you. Always appreciate you. So in listening to you, it made me think of the house that I was born in. And it was 2535 North 8th Street. And when I sit in my office as an appellate judge and I look out over the city and I look at where I was born and where I'm at, I now understand how many people before me, how many lives that were changed and had an influence on me in order for me to be in a position to become a judge, where I have to make decisions about the very situation that you found yourself in as a young man, standing before a judge, where what came out of his mouth equated to 17 years of your life, just like that. So, it bothers me to some extent that we're not being as strategic as we need to be to move ourselves forward. And I think now we're starting to understand our power through our ability to use art and words and organize. We just need to translate that power into our political power. And I think, County Exec Crawley, you're one of the prime examples of how that political power has changed things. And so I'm glad you're in the room. In fact, you called the meeting. So I'm really excited about that. And TR, you're doing a fantastic job. Even tonight, listening to you, I was looking at the comments. The comments blew up when you were talking. So, we've got to figure out a way to be more strategic. And to make sure that we are we're headed in the right direction. So it looks like we're at the point where what I'm going to do is just kind of do a little quick round robin so we can wrap things up and let people give us their thoughts. Their final thoughts on the evening and the future, the film, anything you want. I'm gonna keep it wide open. So, County Exec Crawley.
Well, first and foremost, I just want to thank everybody on this panel. Thank everybody who's joined us. Thank you to the Milwaukee Film. We're celebrating Black History Month. And this is what we're here for. These are the conversations that we need to be having, talking about where we come from as a people right here in the city and county of Milwaukee and what we need to do to move forward. And so let's make sure that we don't stop having this conversation right now. And I know, we're talking about this because it's Black History Month, but Black history is made every day because all of us are making history every day and we all have our own set of Black excellence. And so let's make sure that we continue to have these conversations, move the needle forward, and just know that I'm with you, with all of you in this fight.
All right, Sean.
I would just, definitely echo everything David just said. I want to thank everyone on this panel, Milwaukee Film, Tyshawn, you, Judge Grayson, everyone on this panel, our viewers. I want to leave our audience with this. We must continue to do the work that our ancestors expect of us. We must continue to hold individuals accountable who are in positions of power to bring about transformational change that we seek. And we must also hold ourselves accountable to get informed about the system that is and continues to cause harm to our community. And so I'm going to continue to do this work as an impacted person, because we believe that those who are closest to the problem are closest to the solution. And so we're going to continue to beat down the halls of Capitol the city hall, etc., to be sure that everyone hears what we think needs to happen in this system so that it can stop harming our communities and our people. And with that, thank you.
All right, TR?
I thank you, Tyshawn, for giving us art that inspired this conversation. We wouldn't be having these conversations in this way if it wasn't for what you gave us. I also appreciate of Judge Grayson. Technology was hating on her tonight, but she asked us some very great questions that caused me to watch the film 3 or 4 times, to read a little Audre Lorde and James Baldwin, to quake with myself, really think about how I wanted to show up. And definitely thank you, Judge Donald, for stepping in. I think the thing I think about is one of the community activists, it was Miss Margaret. She said the squeaky wheel gets the grease. It makes me think of my favorite Audre Lorde quote, when I dare to be powerful and to use my strength in the service of my vision, then it becomes less and less important whether I am afraid. I think that is the advocate's mantra. I think that's the mantra of those who have been historically disenfranchised. And I think that, although my future thinks about my nephew and my niece not having to worry about being resilient, about being able to make silly decisions that other people who don't look like them make and are just fine in the world, and doesn't end up to being, sitting in front of a judge looking at time. I think that's my future, that in that space of while we're waiting for that's the advocate's mantra, that is what we do despite our fear, and we push people up against. And I also want to thank you, Tyshawn, for the beginning part of the film that recognized whose land we're on here in Milwaukee, and all of our indigenous and native brothers and sisters in the struggle as well. And so that's what I got tonight. I appreciate y'all. This was great.
All right, Tyshawn?
Awesome. Well, I will be extremely brief. So I thank everyone who attended the panel as well, and just being willing to have conversations surrounding the film. But I just also encourage people to keep sharing the ideal of watching the film. Earlier, they stated that you have the opportunity to continue watching the film through the Milwaukee Lens program until Sunday. So you can go on there, watch the film. And then also after that, it is exclusively streaming on HBO Max. So I know everyone don't have HBO Max, but however you can get it, even if you get it and cancel it, but definitely watch it. I appreciate it. And then also just starting conversations even amongst yourselves, with your family, with your colleagues, with your family. So I appreciate that. So the continuous support of the film.
Well, I will just follow up with 2 things. First of all, if you get a chance to see it, even if you have to run with it like you stole it, you should see it. But I just want to end with this quote. Where justice is denied, where poverty is enforced, where ignorance prevails, and where any one class is made to feel that society is in an organized conspiracy to oppress, rob, and degrade them, neither persons nor property will be safe. Frederick Douglass, April 1886. So we've been in this struggle for a long time. And I appreciate the panel tonight. I learned some things. I know that we're all out there fighting hard to disrupt this pipeline. So I appreciate all of you, and thank you for sharing your thoughts.
Thank you.
This is our first robust month-long celebration of Women's History Month. We have over 30 films, feature films and short films, returning favorites and brand new films, and 6 events featuring local and national luminaries, women that are leading the charge in activism, business, empowerment, arts, and culture. Viewers can access the Women's History Month programming through our app, which is available on a number of different platforms that you can watch on your TV, on your computer, on your tablet. What this is a celebration of women in all of their diversity, looking at their successes, their victories, but also focusing on the work that still needs to be done, the challenges that are facing women today.